Welcome to the bold analysis. There are several interpretations of the current judgment from the Court of Appeal, and I will want us to take in this podcast to delve deep, explain the win that Rigathi Gachagua, the good news that Rigathi Gachagua has received from the court. What does it politically trigger in the political circles, and could there be a deeper hand behind the move? Is there anything to get excited about? Kindly subscribe to our channel, click the notification bell, and like our videos. Today, the Court of Appeal has faulted a decision by the Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu to constitute the bench that okayed Kindiki's inauguration and setting aside the resolution of the Senate. So I want us to go step by step to understand where it started and then the political interpretation of that move. At the time after the former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua was impeached in the Senate, a petition was filed at Kerugoya High Court by an MCA known as David Madenge and others, including some members of the National Assembly who are supporting Rigathi, and they sought some orders. The first order was restraining Kindiki from assuming the office of the Deputy President. This was come because immediately the Senate were done on Thursday night. The next morning, Kindiki's name had been forwarded to Parliament, and the process was being rushed. So when you remember the Rigathi Gachagua impeachment, one of the aspects that really questioned, that was used to override the integrity of the process, was the rush. So they were sorting some prayers. The judges, Kerugoya Court, after they went to court and they wanted Kindiki not to assume office, and the resolution of the Senate, the impeachment at the Senate, to be set aside until the case is heard and determined. Now, the court in Kerugoya ordered that file should be taken to Chief Justice to form a bench of 3 judges to hear the matter. Remember, these charges were actually consolidated. So the bench that was to be constituted by Chief Justice was supposed to hear the consolidated cases. The judge also issued orders preventing implementation of the Senate's resolution, specifically restraining Kindiki from assuming the office of the Deputy President. Now, when that file was taken to Chief Justice, according to the reportage in the case, is that Chief Justice Martha Koome was out of the country and not on official duty. So coincidentally, or rather apparently, it is the Deputy Chief Justice who constituted the bench. The bench included Judge Anthony Murema, Frida Mugambi, and Eric Ogola. That was the bench that was constituted by Philomena Mwilu, who is the Deputy Chief Justice. And this is despite the fact that the directive was for Chief Justice to do the empanelment. And this is something that when I was covering Rigathi Gachagua impeachment, I think if you are a senior member of this channel, you will agree with me that we really, in this podcast, in this channel, I really covered that Rigathi Gachagua impeachment, and my position was very clear that the charges were so flimsy and the state was just using its machinery to bulldoze the process. And most of us question why such a high-profile case, even if the Chief Justice is away, what should take him or what should take her? But of course, I know if she would empanel while she's away, that will still be a problem because records will come that how do you empanel while you are not on official duty? And remember, the empanelment was done over the weekend. So Philomena Mwilu did. But at that time, the High Court sitting in Nairobi determined that the decision for Mwilu to form that bench was an administrative, it was an administrative work that they need to show, they must not show evidence why it is not Chief Justice who did it. And I want you to listen to that argument here.
Article 165, Sub-Article 3 and Sub-Article 4 of the Constitution provide for empanelment of benches of an even number of judges as follows. Permit me not to go through that. In dealing with the above issue, courts have taken two diametrically opposite positions. One of them being that the assignment of judges is a constitutional duty which can only be undertaken by the Honorable Chief Justice. As such, the Honorable DCJ cannot assign judges under Article 165, Sub-Article 4 of the Constitution. The other position posits that although the duty to assign judges is provided for in the Constitution, its implementation is administrative, and that duty can be undertaken by the Honorable DCJ. In Kenya Medical Research Institute versus AG, which was a 3-judge bench of this court, held as follows. They quote, paragraph 37. Therefore, by empaneling this bench, the Chief Justice was carrying out his constitutional mandate as opposed to similar functions under the former Constitution, which were hinged on the constitutional provisions and were merely administrative. End of quote. In Lena, Conchella, and others, which was a 5-judge bench of this court, the court went ahead and described the role of the Chief Justice under Article 165(4) as constitutional as opposed to a merely administrative function. It also said, it is our view that a constitutional mandate of the CJ can be judicial, administrative, or political, and the current Constitution does not indeed state that the Chief Justice is the head of the judiciary which embodies all these functions. The learned judges in that empaneled bench then found that the constitutional mandate exercised by the CJ under 165(4) of the Constitution is an administrative function. The court also elaborately dealt with the issue as to whether such an administrative function could be undertaken by the Honorable DCJ, and in the end, the court rendered itself as follows. I quote paragraph 78. It therefore our finding that constitutional function of the CJ to assign benches under Article 165(4), being an administrative function, can be performed by the Deputy Chief Justice when the Chief Justice is for good reason unable to perform. End of quote. The petitioners in these matters also cited the decision in Okoiti versus JSC and another, which is Constitutional Petition number A408 of 2020, as buttressing the position that the assignment of judges is a constitutional mandate and the sole preserve of the Honorable Chief Justice. The decision was delivered by yours truly, who is part of this expanded bench.
Now, today, the Court of Appeal in Nairobi, presided over by President Daniel Musinga, Judges Mumbi Ngugi and Fred Ochieng, ruled out that powers to empanel a judge bench were only reserved for the Chief Justice. That constitutionally, Deputy Chief Justice is not allowed to empanel the bench. Now, someone might want to ask, why is this part very critical to this case? Because in constituting a bench, there is a latitude that can be used to constitute a favorable bench. Now, this is why it is an issue. And I remember when Rigathi Gachagwa's defense team were actually faulting this decision, they actually said there are some judges whose spouses are related to some state players. So the whole thing the empanelment was a big game changer for the state. And people are asking, was it a coincidence for Chief Justice to be away? Now, the court is also saying that the reasons behind Philomena Mwilu's empanelment of the three-judge bench were not communicated to parties involved, a potential breach of the Constitution. Now, what does this mean? If in the magnitude of this case, if Chief Justice is the one, if the Deputy Chief Justice is the one doing it, then clearly there is something going on here. I've never had, there is no written statement from Chief Justice Martha Koome explaining that she was out on official duty and the deputy did it. Because to me, even in an office setup, when such a decision that is supposed to be made by the boss, that job should be formally be delegated unless someone is away on leave and has given official duties, or someone should explain. When the Chief Justice is abroad, for that moment, does the deputy takes over her roles automatically? It's a question. And it's going to be a very interesting legal debate. The bench that was formed by Mwilu actually is the one that cleared Kindiki to be sworn in. Now they're saying, the Court of Appeal is saying, sitting in Nairobi, saying, I want to get their say here. There was no evidence that the Deputy Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu was acting on behalf of Chief Justice, or that there existed exceptional circumstances that permitted her to form the bench. And I can tell you here, Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu, the Chief Justice Martha Koome, is the one disassociating herself from this. And from where I'm seated, I think Martha Koome wants to clear her name from all this. It's a possibility within the corridors. And this story comes out and portrays Philomena Mwilu as a state actor in that impeachment. Too bad. But it portrays her, whether it is intentionally, whether it is just a coincidence of the situation, but that's one of the picture, that is one of the perception that is coming out. She comes out as a state player in that regarding Gachagua impeachment script. Now, the court has ordered that the files be placed before the Chief Justice within 14 days to constitute a bench to hear the petition. Now the file is going to Chief Justice to be reconstituted. This move predictably is a statecraft or just law taking its course. Now we will find out. It triggers some four aspects, some four factors around the Rigathi Gachagua impeachment. The first predictable one is part of a wider scheme to clear Rigathi Gachagua from the impeachment dirt, and probably so that he can vie for an office. Now, if this is it, I did tell you that Rigathi Gachagua is the player number 6 in that opposition coalition. And he has come out in public and has resumed that role to be the man who is saying, I must not be on ballot, but mimi nitakaa hapo jikoni nikitengeneza. Someone could be seated somewhere to disorganize Rigathi Gachagua as William Ruto's one-term mastermind. I need to say this. If William Ruto is going to lose the 2027 general election, he's going to lose that election because of two politicians. One is Raila Odinga, two is Rigathi Gachagua. Raila Odinga in the sense that if Raila endorses him, he's going to receive a backlash. Rigathi Gachagua says that Rigathi Gachagua decampaigns him and supports another candidate. That candidate is equally going to garner very many votes. And I want you to listen to Rigathi's argument on this case. He was once interviewed, and there is something he said about this case.
Utalaunch chama. Nikisoma katiba ni kwamba mtu ambaye ameondolewa kwa kiti kama jinsi ulivyoondolewa hawezi simamia ofisi kama hiyo, hata kama a public office. I think in article 75.3. Na wewe unataka ku launch chama, so na kesi iko active koti sahi. Kama itakuendea vibaya hiyo kesi,
sheria hiyo
unaona it will be futility.
Lakini kwa nini unasema itaniendea vibaya? Sheria inasema ya Kenya ya kwamba uko na haki ya kupigania kiti kama uko na kesi kotini na haijakamilika mpaka Supreme Court. John Weluke alifungwa 74 years. Akiwa amefungwa akawachiliwa na board. Akasimama kiti ya Sirisia akapita. Akaendelea. Court of Appeal imemuondolea kesi. Kama sasa angekatazwa kusimama kwa sababu alikuwa na kesi, alafu Court of Appeal imeondolea kesi, angekuwa amenyimwa haki yake. Kwa hivyo sheria yetu inasema kama huja exhaust the legal mechanisms, yeah, you are free to fight for any office. Kesi ya Rigathi Gachagua hata haijaanza, itaenda high court. Kama haitaenda vile ninataka ama vile serikali inataka, iende Court of Appeal. Kama haiendi vizuri, tuende mpaka Supreme Court. Kabla haijamalizika na Supreme Court, Rigathi Gachagua atapigania kiti cha urais na atashinda. Na kura mingi sana.
So utaomba kiti cha urais?
Si ndio. Kwani naomba na kina nani? Si wanaume naomba.
Make me understand hii campaign iko vipi, kwa sababu ni kama nyinyi wote mnataka kiti ya urais. Martha Karua pia amesema anataka kiti ya urais. Kalonzo anataka kiti ya urais.
Kila mtu anataka. Mimi napigania kiti cha urais. Martha Karua anapigania kiti cha urais. Kalonzo anapigania kiti cha urais. Matiang'i anapigania kiti cha urais. Eugene Amaro anapigania kiti cha urais. Na tunaendelea kutafuta kura. Pale mwisho tutaongea. Na sisi tutasikizana, tutawachia mtu mmoja.
Wasipokupatia wewe,
hakuna shida, nitaunga mwingine mkono. Lazima huyu jamaa aende nyumbani. Lazima ile formula ambaye tutaona tunafaa. Unasikia? Kwa sababu hii Kenya lazima tumalize uchumi. Lazima tulete Kenya uchumi. Na hii haiwezekani kwa mtu akipata kiti. Kwa hivyo mimi sitajipenda. Mimi ni mgombea kiti cha urais. Matiang'i ni mgombea kiti cha urais. Kalonzo ni mgombea kiti cha, lakini tumesikizana ya kwamba tutakaa pamoja. Pale mwisho tutaketi chini na tutaweka hesabu kwa meza. Wewe Rigathi umekuja na nini? Wewe Kalonzo umekuja na nini? Wewe formula hii nzuri. Tushinde round 1 na 70+1. Sisi tunataka 70+1. Tunataka 70+1. Na tumekubaliana na tutatoa taarifa. We'll commit ourselves before the people of Kenya that among we the presidential candidates wale ambaye tutakuwa kwa kinyang'anyiro pale mwisho tutaketi na tutatoa mtu mmoja wa kung'ang'ana na William Ruto. Na wale wengine wote tutaunga mkono yule ambaye atakubalika. Tutatafuta wataalamu, it will be scientific. There must be a way. Tutaketi chini, tutafute watu watuketishe chini, tukubaliane. Wewe Rigathi umelete hii, Kalonzo umelete hii. Formula gani nzuri ya kumake sure that William Ruto is one term? Ndio uchumi.
Is that the agenda?
Ndio payslip iokolewe. Agenda yetu si kutoa William Ruto. Agenda yetu ni kuregesha Kenya. Lakini ndio Kenya tulegesha lazima William Ruto atoke. Because he is a problem. You understand? You know, I've heard them saying, no, the preoccupation of these people is to remove William Ruto. No. Our preoccupation is not to remove William Ruto. Our preoccupation is to liberate this country. Is to restore the economy. Is to stop corruption. It is to restore the dignity of the payslip. Is to stop tribalism. Those things are not possible when William Ruto is president because he is the architect. of tribalism, of corruption, of theft. Kila kitu yeye ndiye mwenye kufanya hiyo maneno yote. So hii maneno yote haiwezekani bila yeye kutoka. Kwa hivyo the exit of William Ruto is a prerequisite of the liberation of Kenya. You understand? It is not that we just want to remove him for the sake of removing him. No. What we are saying is that he is the cause of all problems as a country. And as long as he is in office, yeah, Kenya will sink. Kenya itaishi. So lazima ndio turegeshe Kenya to liberate this country, to restore the economy, to restore the dignity of the payslip, to bring about reason, good taxation, to restore our image internationally, because ametuharibia image kabisa kwa kuingilia mambo ya biashara Sudan, DRC na wapi. Ndio hii Kenya tuikoboe, tuirudishe pahali inatakikana. Lazima William Ruto aondoke, Kenya tuiregeshe pahali inatakana kuwa. So sisi tumecommit, the 5 or 6 of us, we are all presidential candidates. Kila mtu atavute kura zake, lakini pale mwisho around December there 2026 before Christmas, we'll sit down, tutafuta wataalamu, tuketi chini, we look at the whole political landscape, we do arithmetic, tuangalie kila formula how this man, because we cannot get it wrong, we must get it right. Otherwise there will be no country, hii nchi itakuwa imeisha na tutakuwa na shida kama taifa. Kwa hivyo that is our commitment to the people of Kenya. So mtu asikwambia ati nilitolewa, mimi niko kotini, I have not exhausted, hata high court bado answer. In fact we have some preliminary issues in the court of appeal. Kesi bado, hii ni kesi itaendelea miaka na miaka. Ikiendelea sisi tuko tunaendelea.
This is what is enticing William Ruto. And the team could think, the state team could think, why not? Let's return Rigathi in the ring. The second aspect, and it's just under triggering Rigathi to run for office, if this is going to be the situation for Rigathi to run, then it's supposed to trigger a political mistrust. It's supposed to plant some political mistrust in that coalition. And let me say this. As things stand now, in that coalition, there are 3 viable presidential candidates. One is Martha Karua, Kalonzo Musyoka, and Matiang'i. Now, regarding by the virtue of him going through that impeachment, he's supposed to, he cannot vie for office. And I'm going to put my point on Rigathi vying for office. Now, if Rigathi is cleared, that will be a different ballgame altogether. And he will be tempted to be amongst the principals vying for that position. My Twitter link sent advisory. If I'll get 5 or 2 minutes next to Rigathi Gachagua, is that while he's popular, and William Ruto is already uncomfortable with Rigathi playing the midfield role, pushing him to a more advanced role in that coalition, while it serves his interest, but they've realized that they would want him to go with Mount Kenya vote. In that way, I can tell you, if Rigathi vies, he will get a very good chunk of Mount Kenya vote. By the end, there will be some division on that camp. Now, the other issue is to gauge Mount Kenya resolve to support a non-Kikuyu. Now, let me tell you, in the next few days, one of the polls that are going to be done is asking people whether they can support a non-Kikuyu, and specifically whether they are willing to support Rigathi Gachagua. What will be the level of their excitement if Rigathi is to come back to the presidential ballot? That is one thing. But I've seen people talking in social media, people reacting to this, and I even talked to some of our 2 senior members of this channel were saying Rigathi should keep to that midfield role and not thrust himself in to run. Now, the second aspect this move is supposed to trigger is Kindiki eligibility in 2027, or rather, Kindiki rating for 2027. Now, let me tell you, with an information that there is some glimmer of hope for Rigathi Gachagua, one of the things that the state would want to gauge is Mount Kenya approval of Rigathi, Mount Kenya approval of Kindiki if Rigathi is an option. For example, let me ask. If Ruto is to call Rigathi today so that Rigathi can be his running mate in 2027, what will you think? What will be it? And also this will help to coalesce, try to trigger Mount Kenya MPs to coalesce around a candidate. Now, the other third aspect is this. From the court, if this information is supposed to prove him innocent, William Ruto would also want to tone down the Rigathi rhetoric on him. You know, the harsh messaging, the hardcore talk, and the hardcore attack Rigathi is having on the president is largely because they feel that there is the anger and the big fallout. So someone would want to maybe to try to tone down, but I also see this legal, it's also going to, there's also going to be, also to trigger some legal audit on the other governor's impeachment. If a decision is going to be made here, it will have some precedents on other impeachment cases that we've had, and probably it's another way of returning quite a number of them back. The president is also looking at Meru, and if it's clear that Kawira Mwangaza could be back to the politics of Meru. Now, will Rigathi be lured back, and will he accept it? Thank you.